Even those of you who talk about the 1%, you don't really get what's going on. You're never going to meet these people. You're never going to have any sense of what it is that they control. And most people, I think, have no idea. People like Teddy Roosevelt, who are willing to say this is a bad thing. We do not want the society that is emerging here. These are people who have a lot of influence because of the amount of money they control. If you have conversations with people who are not in this business, they have no idea what real wealth means in America. They think that having $1 million makes you wealthy. They think that or having a salary of several $100,000 makes you wealthy. And while it's certainly true, that's a vastly privileged condition compared with most people, the sheer size of those big fortunes is so far outside our normal experience that it does become invisible. You're never going to meet these people. You're never going to have any sense of what it is that they control. And most people, I think, have no idea. This is very strange, and it's kind of scary because it's one thing if someone without a lot of power seems to be going off and into a rage for no good reason, but these are people who have a lot of influence because of the amount of money they control. Even those of you who talk about the 1%, you don't really get what's going on. You are living in the past. You're living in the 80s. You think that Gordon Gekko is the future. And Gordon Gekko is a bad guy. He's a predator, but he's a self-made predator. We are on the road not just to a highly unequal society, but to a society of an oligarchy, a society of inherited wealth, patrimonial capitalism. If you have a large fortune, suppose that our family has a large fortune, inheritors of that large fortune can live very, very well. They can live extraordinary standard of living and still put a large fraction of the income from that fortune aside, and the fortune will grow faster than the economy. So the big dynastic fortunes tend to take an ever-growing share of total national wealth. So when you have a situation where the returns on capital are pretty high and the growth rate of the economy is not that high, you have a situation in which not only can people live well off inherited wealth, but they can actually pass on to the next generation even more, an even higher share. And when you have a high R, low G economy, which is what we now have, then you're talking about a situation in which dynasties come increasingly to dominate the top of the economic spectrum, and a tiny fraction of the population ends up very dominant. When you have a few people who are so wealthy that they can effectively buy the political system is going to tend to serve their interests, and that is going to reinforce this shift of income and wealth towards the top. The story is already changing, and it's going to change more. So we are going to probably, unless something gets better, we're going to look back nostalgically on the early 21st century when you could still at least have the pretense that the wealthy actually earned their wealth. And by the year 2030, it'll all be inherited. Even though the ideology is democratic, even though we claim that all men are equal, in practice, not a chance. They've managed to convince a lot of people that it is somehow un-American. I think mostly it's just because there's a very effective apparatus of TV and print media and think tanks and so on who hammer against any suggestion of redistribution, which actually, if you look at American history, that's not at all true, but it's just been pushed very hard. I think also in the United States, look, we have to admit it, that race is always lurking under almost everything in American life. And redistribution, in the minds of a lot of people, means taking money from people like me and giving it to people who don't look like me. And I think that is a big difference between us and Europe. Take a few percent of national income, take it away from that top 1% and direct it towards the bottom 20%. That's a tremendous gain in the quality of life of the bottom 20%. We only escaped from the old oligarchy for a while, thanks to really disastrous events, thanks to wars and depression, which disrupted the system. That's an argument you can make. On the other hand, if you read histories of the New Deal, you know that it didn't spring out of nowhere, that we had a progressive movement and a lot of proto-New Deal programs building for quite a long time. There was an increasing political, philosophical readiness to take on inequality of wealth and power long before FDR moved into the White House. And so I think there are better angels of our nature, that there is this ugliness which can be frightening, but there is also a redemptive streak in here and in other places, and that you don't give up hope on this, that given consistent argumentation, given events, and perhaps, as people become more aware of what is actually going on, then there is a chance of changing things. Do we know that? No, but there's nothing in what we know now that says that you should give up hope of being able to change this even without catastrophe.